Hey class, we are going to read chapter 9 of I Am Malala. It is titled Candy from the Sky. And we always like to start by taking a look back on what we read before, and it's been a little while. So if we take a look here, if you remember, Benazir Bhutto was killed by the Taliban in this last chapter, this last chunk. And so they knew that no one in Pakistan was safe anymore, and they just had this really sick feeling about the whole thing. So that is where we're starting today, and we are on chapter 9. Oh, and Malala felt like she knew she had to do something. She was only 10 years old, but she knew she could do something. Chapter 9, Candy from the Sky. One day in the autumn of 2007, we were sitting in class when we heard a fearsome roaring from outside. Everyone, students and teachers, ran out to the courtyard and looked up. A swarm of giant black army helicopters darkened the sky overhead. They whipped the wind around us and stirred up a storm of dirt and sand. We cupped our hands over our ears and tried to yell at one another, but our voices were drowned in the din. Then there was a plunk as something landed on the ground at our feet. Plunk, plunk, plunk. We screamed, and then we cheered. Toffees! The soldiers were tossing candy down to us. We laughed our heads off as we went scrambling to catch the toffees. We were so delighted that it took us a minute to understand what was going on. The army had come to rescue Swat from Fazula. We cheered and clapped and jumped up and down. Candy was falling from the sky, and peace would be coming to Swat. Soon the soldiers were everywhere. Helicopters were even parked on the Mignora golf course. It was strange to see the army in Swat. We'd been praying for someone to stand up to Fazula and his men with their black turbans and their Kalashnikov rifles, but now our town was swarming with men in green uniforms and Kalashnikov rifles. Practically overnight, Fazula's men disappeared like snow melting into the ground. But although we could not see them, we knew they had not gone far. Only a few kilometers away, and Mignora remained a tense and frightened city. Each day after school, my brothers and I would race home and lock the doors. No more playing cricket in the alley, no more hide-and-seek in the street, no more candy from the sky. One evening, we had heard an announcement from the loudspeakers atop the mosque. The army imposed a curfew. We did not know this word, curfew, so I knocked on the wall to Safina's house so someone next door could come to the hole in the wall and explain. Soon Safina and her mother and brother came to our house and told us it meant we had to stay indoors for certain hours of the day and always at night. My brothers and I were so scared we didn't even come out of our rooms. We stayed inside and peered through the curtains at the empty street in front of our house. That night, a streak of bright light flashed across the sky, lighting up the room for a second like a flashbulb on a camera. Boom! A thud shook the ground. I jumped out of bed and ran to my parents. Kushal and Atal came running to join us. We all huddled together, shaking. The dishes clattered, the furniture shook, and the windows rattled. Then, within minutes, the army's gunfire began in the outskirts of the city. With each blast and shot, we gripped one another harder until we drifted off to sleep. The next morning, we woke up as if we were coming out of a long, fitful dream. After a night full of bombing, the air seemed oddly still. We dared to hope. Was it possible that the army had defeated the Taliban? We peeked out the gate and saw knots of people from the neighborhood gossiping. My father went to find out what had happened. He came back inside frowning. The rumor on the street? The Taliban was going to take control of Swat. The military operation was ineffective. Our hearts sank. The army sent 10,000 more men, and the fighting raged on and on, night after night, for a year and a half. You guys, hold on. Just imagine that. Imagine every night outside your house, bombing and guns. Every single night. I can't imagine how terrifying that has to be. I was always the first to run to our parents' and my brothers quickly followed. And since the bed was now too crowded, I had to sleep on a pile of blankets on the floor. Even in the middle of a war, I was able to be irritated with those two for stealing my spot. Strange as it sounds, we got used to the bombing and shelling. Sometimes a tall slept through it, and Kushal and I came up with a system to figure out where the fighting was. If the fighting was nearby, the electricity went out. If it was farther away, the power stayed on. There were 3 types of attacks, and we learned to distinguish them. Bombing was done only by the Taliban, sometimes by remote control, but other times by suicide bombers. Shelling from helicopters and cannons fired from the mountaintops was the army. The 3rd type, machine guns, was used by both. I used to get afraid at night, especially during bomb blasts. From my spot on the floor in my parents' room, I recited a special verse from the Holy Quran, the Ayat al-Kursi. Say it 3 times, and your home will be safe from devils and any kind of danger. Say it 5 times, and your neighborhood is safe. Say it 7 times, and your whole town is safe. I said it 7, 8, 9 times, so many times I lost track. Then I spoke to God. Bless us and protect us, I'd say. Bless our father and family. Then I'd correct myself. No, bless our street. No, our neighborhood. Bless all of Swat. Then I'd say, no, bless all of Pakistan. Not just Pakistan. Bless all the world. I tried to plug my ears and picture my prayers floating up to God. Somehow each morning we awoke, safe and sound. I didn't know the fate of all the other people I'd prayed for, but I wished for peace for everyone, and especially peace for Swat. One day, my prayer was answered. The army hadn't won, but it had at least driven the Taliban into hiding, if not away. So that is the end of chapter 9.